kind of shows that like it's okay to change your labels as you learn more about yourself. All right. Welcome back to another episode of The Virgin and the Bees. I'm your host, Zareena. My pronouns are she and her. And welcome back to a special guest, Lauren Van. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. So, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you will remember that Lauren was on for our very first episode, Being a Late Bloomer, What You Should Know Before Sex. So, very happy to have her back on for this episode. And in case you missed it or you need a little refresher, Lauren and I were roommates back in college. So, we've had a lot of talks like this, and she actually was working at this student-run sex education organization, I guess, at our university. It was within the sociology department, but they focused on creating sex educational material and resources for literally anyone. There's a website called Sex Info Online. You can check it out. And so Lauren worked there during her time at UCSB. And so she's very knowledgeable about sex things from that. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to say about yourself before we get started.
Yeah, I'm Lauren. I go by she, they pronouns. I really don't mind. I like talking about sex and sexuality and rights and all that kind of fun stuff.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I identify as bi. It's a fun time. Yeah, and I have a TikTok. Last year was instrumental in kind of accepting my sexuality and coming out. I already knew and I had been bi for a while, but I was too scared to come out, and then I accidentally came out to around 15,000 people. They just started coming in,
It
and
happens sometimes.
right, shit happens, so yeah, that gave me the guts to come out. But I realized that I really enjoy talking about LGBTQ topics and speaking on different labels and different aspects of sexuality and kind of thinking about my own sexuality and my own identity and really just unpacking all of it because it's so fluid and it's just so interesting to me. So I'm very excited to talk about this. But yeah, we love sex and we're ready.
Yes, we love sex and we're ready. But if you're going to have sex, do it safely because we're in a pandemic. So, and even if
Yes,
we're in a pandemic,
yeah,
protect
STIs are
yourself
a
and others.
thing.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah. And before we, dive right in, just a little disclaimer that we are speaking about our own experiences and kind of things that we've seen. And also, I have a little bit of survey data, but we do not speak on behalf of the whole LGBTQ plus community. It is a very diverse community with very diverse and different experiences. So just a little disclaimer there. But yeah, so this episode, we kind of want to center around the topic of labels and labeling when it comes to your sexual orientation, because it can be kind of, it seems like something that seems very like one and done, almost like, oh, your whole life and then
Yeah,
you come out as gay and then end of story, which is the case for some people but not for everyone.
no.
So so Lauren, why don't we start with just a little bit of your story of what that journey has looked like for you.
Oh gosh. Okay. Where do we start? Part of the reason I think it's so interesting to think about this stuff is just because I didn't know for so long, and I went my whole life thinking I was just straight. I kind of knew I wasn't. Like I always kind of knew I was like just the way that I like saw other people and like approach that aspect of life and stuff was just fundamentally different in some way.
Mhm.
I didn't really recognize that as being like a queer thing. I just thought, I don't know. I just assumed I was straight because everyone around me was straight, and
Or so you thought?
I don't. Oh my god, yeah, no, so true. But like, especially growing up, like if someone wasn't straight, then they were just like fully gay, and that's all I knew. I was like, oh, you can be lesbian, or you can be like a gay man, or you can be straight. And I didn't even know that gender. I'm really glad that I've learned more about like the gender binary and gender expression and all of that. But growing up, I had no idea. I thought it was lesbian, gay, straight, and I knew I liked men, so I was like, "Okay, cool, I'm straight." Like that's just how it is. And like I always could relate to movies and stuff, and I didn't really have any like media showing me that like being bi was a thing, and so I was always just like, "Okay, cool. That's just like what I am, and that's what all my friends are, and that's just what makes sense." And then yeah, I feel like I'm not unusual in this, but when I went to college, I met a lot of people who were kind of like fluid, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like girls are hot, but like I had sex with a guy last night, and I want to have sex with another guy again, but girls are hot too." And I was like, why do I relate to that? Like, fuck, what does this mean? Like, okay. And the wheels kind of started turning in my head. And then I remember my roommate lent me her laptop so I could watch Orange is the New Black. And I like binged like the entire thing in like a week. Like, it was ridiculous. And for the first time, I saw like women just like interacting with each other in like a, kind of dating type of way. And I was kind of like, oh shit, like this makes a lot of sense to me. Like this doesn't even seem unusual. Like I can totally wrap my mind around this. Like, but I'm
Yeah.
straight. Like I like men. In Orange is the New Black, the like main character Piper, she starts out married to a guy, and this isn't like a spoiler at all because it literally happened in the first season. It's like instrumental to the show, but she ends up with a girl pretty quickly once she gets into prison, and I watching that was just like, but she was married to a guy and she's dated both, and I was just like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense to me. That really makes a lot of sense to me. Why does that make so much sense to me? Why don't I have an issue like wrapping my mind around that for myself? What the fuck? And so that kind of got the wheels turning in my head. And I cut my hair multiple times following that. It was somewhat instrumental. Like I cut it because I wanted to cut it, but I also cut it and I was like, huh, I look kind of hot. Like I look kind of like different in a way that I hadn't seen myself before.
Channeling that inner Ruby Rose.
Exa Oh my god, are you kidding me? Yes. But no, like when I cut my hair, I was like, whoa, like this is cool. Like I feel powerful. Like that it's just like a side of myself that was like unlocked almost. I like chopped all my hair off. I dyed it white. I dyed it purple. All the colors. Like I dyed my hair pink, purple, and blue, which is the bi flag. It's kind of adorable. I didn't
Is
even
that
know
on purpose? No, it was okay.
No, I didn't even know that there was a bi flag. I didn't know I was bi. Like, oh, hilarious. Yeah, and so it kind of like just like festered in my head, and I was like, you might be pan, because I didn't really have a good understanding of anything yet, because this was like when I first started college, like freshman year, end of freshman year. I was like, you might be pan, because like you're kind of able to be into anyone, but you're also not into anyone. Like, and that was hard to wrap my mind around too. I'm like, why do I literally run away from people? That was a whole other thing to unpack. But I kind of had that weird little like sexual awakening going on, and I was like, what the fuck does this mean? But then I just had a bunch of like weird little experiences with guys. And then I ended up in a relationship for like 2 years with a guy. And so I didn't really have to or want to question it. I was just like, hey, we're just going to table that. And if it ever becomes relevant or if it ever just becomes too much, then I'll talk to him about it. But like, it just didn't really cross my mind because I'm a very like monogamous person. And so I just didn't really like even think about it because I was like into him. And then we broke up. And I think I remember like that night I was telling you, I was like, oh, I gotta make out with a girl now. Like, this is
Yeah.
cool, Like, it sucks. The breakup fucking sucked. It was heartbreaking, but I get to explore this side of myself. And
Yeah.
I get to fucking finally find out if and what these little inklings and feelings are. Yeah, I downloaded Tinder.
Hey.
I I sent it to both, to everyone or whatever it was, and like Hinge and Bumble as well. And I was like swiping through, and I was like, yeah, there's a lot of hot people, and they're not all just men. Like I'm attracted to a lot of people, so that was like just kind of mind blowing. And I was like, oh gosh, what does this mean? And so I went online and I found, like queer YouTubers and Instagrammers, etc. And I was just like watching their videos, and I watched so many coming out videos, and I related to a lot of them. And I was just like, okay, yeah, cool. I guess I'm a part of that community. Like I always like believed in LGBTQ rights and stuff. I was just like, wait, like, am I like, is that, are we a thing now? Like, is
Yeah.
this a thing? Like, what? And so I was kind of trying to wrap my mind around that for a while, and I experimented like crazy for a good year, year and a half or something, and I just like really figured it out. I was like, okay, yeah, this is a thing. Like I finally felt like this part of me that had always been hiding was like unlocked, and
Oh.
yeah, it like I didn't even know it was hiding because I thought I was straight and I thought I was just like whatever. And I am bi. Like I am totally fine with dating a man. I totally fine with dating a girl. I'm totally fine with dating a non-binary person with anyone. I just have to like them.
Hmm.
But I just all of a sudden was trying to wrap my mind around the idea of like, oh shit, wait, I could end up dating anyone. Like I how would I even introduce them to my family? And like luckily, like my family, I knew they wouldn't care, but I was still just like, oh, I have to tell people, don't I? Like,
Yeah.
oh, that's an unanticipated part of this process. And so I remember I was dropping hints for years. I quoted this song "Lesbian Seagull" in like a post where I'm like posing on the beach, and like obviously no one got the hint, but I was dropping them for so long. And then again, I cut my hair to this length, and then I cut it again. I dyed it white, and that was kind of me being like, we're gonna finally embrace this masculine kind of side of your personality, and we're gonna embrace not even the masculine side, but just more of the side that I'd never let out before and never like addressed. I really experimented with that, and then I actually ended up making a TikTok account at the end of 2019, I think. At this point, like a couple people knew. I told like some of my friends, like my mom, and I made a TikTok account so I could follow people that I was too scared to follow on my real Instagram because I was like scared that someone would like go in and see who
Yeah.
I was following and figure it out, even though like it doesn't matter, but I was still just like was not ready.
Yeah.
And and so at the beginning of 2020, I just posted a video like kind of talking about how like I was trying on different outfits to like a song or whatever, and it was like a masculine outfit and a feminine outfit, a masculine outfit, and a feminine outfit, and um and it got like thousands of views like out of nowhere, and it was like people commenting that they kind of related because I was like, oh, I never know what to wear. Like then I just kind of started posting on there about just kind of being bi and what I was struggling with and what I was thinking about and who I was attracted to at the moment and how confusing that can be trying to navigate who you're even attracted to at any given moment. And I just started posting about it, and all of a sudden, like, people were following me and following me, following me, and it just, like, turned into something so much bigger than I thought it would be, and,
Yeah.
I yeah, it started as an outlet, but then it turned into something that gave me the confidence to, like, fully come out on, like, Instagram, which had, like, all the people I, like, know in real life on it, so that was, like, scary, but it was really cool because, like, the minute that happened, I felt so liberated, and I still deal with a lot of, like, internalized and also externalized biphobia
Mm.
and just kinda dealing with that, but it's really cool kind of having the confidence and knowing that I don't have to, like, hide that aspect of who I am anymore, and I've fully wrapped my mind around it, and it's, like, not this thing that's just living in the back of my brain anymore, it's, like, out and there, and it's fine, and yeah, it's been a little confusing because I feel like bi is just such an umbrella and it can mean so much to
Yeah.
so many different people and it's a lot to wrap your head around. But that I just talked for absolutely forever, but that was kind of
No, no
my
worries.
journey into realizing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, congrats on, being in this more confident space, when you were talking about like how you had the courage to come out on Instagram and how liberated you feel. I'm like, yes, go Lauren. So and if you're not there, if you're listening, like it's totally fine to not be there either, but I'm happy for you and other people who have gotten to a place where they feel comfortable expressing themselves in that way. So,
Yay.
yeah. Yeah. So I guess with this, and because I know we were talking about how being bi, and hi, I'm bi. I don't think I said that.
Hi, I'm bi.
Hi, bye. Hello, goodbye. um, but looking at a lot of times there's like in media, sometimes there'll be like, a bi woman who's married to a man, and people be like, oh, well, she's straight, whatever. She might have been bi then, but she's not bi anymore. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that's like saying if you marry someone named, I don't know, what's a random name? What's the last person you talked to?
Evan.
What's her name? Evan. If
I
you named
haven't talked to one, but that's just the name.
That's like saying if you marry someone named Evan, now you're Evan sexual instead of straight or gay. Like, like that's
Oh yeah.
basically what that's saying. Like it completely discounts, like that's a straight person who never sexually thinks about the other gender or other genders versus someone who has, like it's just I don't know. I guess that's kind of going on a tangent away from like how you identify and label, but I feel like as you said, like there's so much externalized biphobia which can lead to internalized biphobia,
Yeah.
and it sometimes can seem confusing, but like I guess, trying to stray away from those external factors and not internalize it too much, or at least recognize when it's internalized in you.
Yeah. No, and I didn't even know that biphobia was a thing until I came out as bi. Or like actually like when I was on like Tinder and stuff, like I noticed like lesbian like women would sometimes just like ghost me the minute they found out I was bi
Mm,
and like into men, you know? And I was just like, why? Like I what? Like that they have nothing to do with you. Like I don't understand, you know? And I also noticed that a lot of straight men are totally fine with it, but there's the problem of people fetishizing it.
yeah.
And so I kind of found out that it's like just coming at you from a bunch of different angles, and I never really thought about that until I kind of experienced it and was like thrown into like also on TikTok, like I'll see videos where like a girl is like, ah, like I don't date bi people, like that's gross. And I'm like, thanks. Cool. You
Yeah.
know? And so I feel like that was like an interesting revelation that I didn't know I was gonna have when I came out.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I don't know if from the outside is the right way to put it, but a lot of people like looking into the LGBTQ community, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, everyone just like is great and is out with their identity and everyone's just having a fine and dandy old time," which for like I'd want to say like the most part is true, and there's definitely people like that, but you kind of don't realize all these like internal like
Yeah,
disagreements and struggles. And of course, like any group is going to have those, and to think that it doesn't is, I guess, kind of like, I don't know if this is a word, but monolithizing the group. Does that
yeah, yeah, like,
make sense?
yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
don't think that's a word, but it does make sense.
yeah, thanks. But the fact that there are these still like prejudices happening within the community, a community that's so built on anti-prejudice is just not something you think about, you
It
know?
sucks.
Yeah.
Like, just plain and simple, it sucks. And I think part of it is because your sexuality is so ingrained into your identity and kind
Mhm.
of who you are. And so having people tell you that it's not real or that it's like gross or whatever, it just like kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And I think also like part of it is that it can be very fluid, and sexuality doesn't necessarily have to be set in stone. And I think that's part of the perception that I had when I thought I was straight and when I was growing up is that you realize you're lesbian and you're just lesbian. Or you realize you're gay and you're just gay and that's what you are. And I again didn't know that bi even was a thing. I didn't really know that there was so much more to it.
Yeah.
But especially being bi, I feel like where it is inherently kind of a fluid identity because maybe sometimes you're like more attracted to one gender and more less attracted to another and it kind of flip-flops and that can be
Oh,
really
yeah.
yeah, we will definitely get into that. So fucking confusing, but I feel like kind of having that struggle where it's just like, oh, like I feel straight today. Like, am I still LGBTQ? Like, what is this? And like
Yeah.
kind of dealing with like external influences where I know like for me, like a lot of stuff I see on social media is like women are so great. Why would you ever want to date a man? And people like it and they comment on it and they're like, oh, that's so funny, like whatever. And I can recognize that that's kind of funny, especially if
Mhm.
someone leans way more towards women or they're just kind of getting used to that side of themselves. Like I know when I was trying to wrap my mind around the idea of being queer, I kind of would laugh at those like jokes a little more because I was way more into women at the time. But
Mhm.
as I kind of grew into my sexuality and my identity, I was like, wait, that's kind of fucked up. Like it's really invalidating for someone to be like, ew, like men are gross. Why would you ever date a man? Like it if seeing jokes like that and being like, no, like I'm still attracted to men though, like it can be very invalidating and problematic because like I men are hot. Like that's just like a
Yeah.
fact. I that's a fact to me. Getting people being like, ew, like women are so much better. Like you should only date those. And if you're coming out as lesbian or something like that, then I think that that kind of makes more sense. But if you're kind of realizing that you're bi, then it can like be kind of hurtful and invalidating to get like that message of like, ew, if you date a man, that's gross, and then you're not part of the community and all that. And like that's purely speaking on my experience as like someone who is female and deals with that. But I'm sure for bi like dudes, it's like an entirely I that's super hard as well. I can't speak on that, but that's just like from me, like what I notice.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That actually reminds me of this study that I did. Not I did. I'm a researcher, guys. I'm an LGBTQ plus researcher. A study I found, it was a survey, asking older LGBTQ plus individuals the difference between how they identified before they were 18 versus now, I guess at the time that they did the study. Overwhelmingly, like the biggest jumps, like okay, the main jump was, before they were 18, most of them identified as heterosexual, or a lot of them identified as heterosexual, as straight, and that went way down because this was a group of LGBTQ plus individuals is who they were interviewing. But it went down from before 18, 54% of respondents identified as straight, and that went down to 4% at the time of interviewing. That's obviously like a huge decrease. But some people might be like, oh, well, why is that not 0%? And I think that might be because, people who are maybe trans or something and they still identify as straight, just maybe a different gender than what they were born
Yeah.
with. That's what I think is what would make up that 4%. But anyway, so that's a big jump, and that's fairly obvious. But what I found super interesting was the other biggest jump was the increase in people identifying as queer. And so, this is people identifying as gay, straight, lesbian, bi, those things. But queer jumped from 5% of people identified as queer before 18. And then at the time of interviewing, 44% identified as queer. And that was the highest jump, the biggest change. And I thought that was especially interesting because queer is more, as you said, with bisexuality, it's a more kind of fluid identity, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but it's rather than just being, attracted to one specific gender or having a specific kind of identity. Like queer is meant to kind of encompass, a wider range of things and to be a more vague identity. And it kind of is more like what one person identifies as queer could be different to another's identification of queer,
Mhm.
in terms of like what that means to them. And so I thought that was interesting that more people identified as that. And then the orientation that people identified with the most in that survey was bi/pan. That was one option together, not bi or pan, just bi/pan. So maybe if it was split up, those would have, been lower numbers, but that started at 34%. So before 18, 34% of people identified as bi/pan. And then at the time of interviewing, so when they're older, that went up to 52%. So that was the highest identification. And same thing, well, maybe not same thing as queer, but it still is more fluid, a more fluid kind of identity. And then other identities like asexual, gay, and lesbian, those also went up as people, grew up and realized that they weren't straight, or that, just learning more about themselves. But so all of those went up, but only by a little bit. So for example, with asexual identity, before 18, roughly 3% identified as asexual. And then at the time, roughly 10% identified as asexual. So that was a jump, but it wasn't a huge jump.
Yeah. That
Same
makes
with,
sense.
yeah, yeah. And same with identifying as gay. Before age 18, roughly 16% identified as gay. Afterwards, roughly 23 or 22%, round down, 22.47% identified as gay. And then with lesbian, before, roughly 8% identified as lesbian. And then afterwards, roughly 11%. So these numbers still went up, but not by that much. The biggest jumps and the biggest representation were in queer, bi, and pan. And so it almost kind of goes to show that as people got older, they realized that their sexuality and their sexual orientation was more encompassing, I guess, than they had previously thought.
Yeah.
And not that it has to be that way. Like, obviously, straight, gay, lesbian, like those still exist too.
Mhm.
But it was just interesting to see that.
Yeah. No, that is interesting, and I think it is important to remember that for some people, like, it is not fluid, like, you realize you're lesbian and that's just all you want, and that is, like, completely valid, but Yeah, it is kind of interesting realizing like how many people also had the same like, oh shit, like I'm just kind of I'm fine with whatever. Like this is like
Yeah.
a thing. Like people are just kind of hot and it's whatever, or people like no one's hot and that's fine too. And I think the fact that people kind of grow up and maybe they thought they were straight and it just took meeting that one person and just you're kind of like, oh wait, like, oh, that's they're hot too, like I guess I'm something now, like, or
Yeah.
like me growing up I was always just kind of like, I don't think I'm totally straight, but like I'm straight because that's like what I'm just gonna label myself as because that's whatever it
Yeah.
is, and we're just not gonna unpack things. But then kind of realizing that your label can be a little more convoluted than that, and it can include more than that. It can be fluid and kind of taking that pressure off of yourself to define yourself as, oh, I am this and this is what I want and this is who I'm looking for. Instead, it's more of just like, oh, I'm open to things. And I think
Mhm.
that having that queer or questioning like umbrella label for I'm not straight, I am something else. I maybe know, I maybe don't, but I'm just going to identify as something under this general umbrella. I think it's nice
Mhm.
to have that because it takes the pressure off to choose or to kind of have to back yourself up and be like, "Oh no, like I don't know, like oh, I did date a guy, but I'm more into girls. Look, see, I'm dating a girl now." And then you break up and then you're dating a guy again and like people might find that confusing or you might just not know how to describe that. And so having that umbrella kind of helps to explain that. And I think that it's cool that as people grow up, there are more people kind of realizing like, oh, hey, I'm not totally straight. I'm something, and like it's nice having that freedom almost to not like have to confine yourself to anything.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I loved what you're saying about not feeling pressure to like identify a certain way or like back up your claim of
Mhm.
like almost like you're like writing an essay or something about your sexuality. Like, see, I have to defend what it is to the world. But yeah, and kind of going back to that idea of labeling kind of shows that like it's okay to change your labels as you learn more about yourself.
Yeah,
And also, you don't have to share your label with the world if you don't want to. Like, it's your relationship with yourself. And so you can share however much of that as you want to or not want to, and you learn more about yourself, you change, you grow, and it's not, labels don't have to be static.
yeah, exactly. And that actually reminds me, like in that study you were talking about how some of the people like stayed being straight. They could have potentially been trans people who just kind of like became straight once they fully started identifying as the gender they were. But I think also part of it might be is that some people maybe didn't feel totally safe identifying as like gay or queer or whatever, and so maybe they still identify and call themselves straight even though they know they're not.
Hmm.
You know, it's like in
Mhm.
the back of my head, like I know like I'm a man who's attracted to men, but I'm just going to stay identifying as straight because maybe it's like safer or they're just don't want to like unpack that or they just don't really like see a need to come out and choose a label. And so
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of interesting too is that labels, you know, you don't have to like label yourself, and like coming out can be a lot for people, and so I think
Mhm.
that's kind of symbolic of the fact that everyone's kind of on a journey, you know, and
Definitely.
maybe it's like sad and they're suppressing it, which sucks. Or
Mm.
maybe it's kind of like when I was dating a guy and I was like, oh yeah, I'm probably something, but like I'm with a guy who I love and I don't really feel the need to unpack that. So I'm just going to be straight still, even though in the back of my head, I kind of know like I'm probably
Mhm.
not, but like I don't care about that right now, you know? And so I think it's kind of interesting that aspect of it too. Yeah, that was a little bit of a tangent, but what you were saying kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, definitely, as you said, it can be a journey, and maybe that's a journey where, I think every LGBTQ plus person, even if they identify as, strictly gay or strictly lesbian or strictly whatever, and that's what they realize that they've known all their life, and then that's their truth and that remains their truth. Like, I think everyone has been on a journey, like, even for those people, and once again, like, maybe that this isn't correct because I'm not one of those people, but it seems like they had to go through this journey of accepting themselves in a world that didn't. And then they came to, fully accept their truth that they've known or maybe didn't know. And then they, feel like they're in a much better place. But I think most people, it is a journey to some degree, and that may look different for different people. I'm sure it does look different for different people, but I think that's a great way of describing it.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and I think one of the things you said too, just now about kind of like your past and like your journey, like doesn't necessarily define you. Like if maybe like you're a girl who dated a man and then later on in life realized that you were lesbian, like you're still totally valid. And I think also being bi, like maybe people will be like, "Oh, like have you ever actually tested that out though? Like have you ever actually explored that? Like how do you actually know you're bi and not just straight and like making it up or whatever?" Or if like you're asexual, it's like, "Oh, but you've had sex in the past. Like how did that work if you're asexual?" And it's like nobody owes anyone an explanation, and it's someone's own journey, and maybe they had to go through something to realize something, or
Mhm.
it was an integral part of them realizing like, oh yeah, I don't like this, and there's a lot of trauma and stuff that can also happen along with that. And so I think that there's kind of like a pressure to almost like prove your sexuality, and like
Yeah,
there shouldn't
definitely.
need to be. It's like and that's fucking fine, and like it can change and whatever, but it's just how someone identifies.
Yeah, exactly. It's your own business, and how much of you share that is
Yeah.
whatever you want. And that actually reminded me when you were saying about, like, oh, well, like, how do you know if you've never tried this? Like, I remember back when I was 13, and this was back when, like, gay marriage still wasn't legal and like all this other stuff. And it's amazing to see how much the social mind the social mindset has
Yeah.
shifted in like 10 years. But anyway, there was this guy who, a straight guy, at least from what I know back then, he presented as a straight cisgender guy. I don't know about now. I'm not in contact with him, but he was saying like, oh, well, like, how do people like know that they're gay? Or like, it was also a thing like, why can't they just choose not to be gay or something? And I'm like, well, when did you like choose to be attracted to girls? Like, when did you wake up and say, I'm going to be attracted to
Yeah.
girls? Like, is that how it happened?
Yeah.
Which is the obvious answer is no. Well, I guess once again, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I feel like for most people,
Yeah.
it's something that just, like, oh, I had a wet dream, or, oh, I'm, like fantasizing about this gender,
Yeah.
it's just very, but I think it is this thing of like, just knowing,
Mhm.
and that, I think for me too, like, haven't had sex with a woman, I haven't had sex with a man, I haven't had sex with anyone, but
Yeah.
like, I mean, I've kissed both, but but that's kind of not really the point, I guess. The point is that like, I feel like I still know, and
Yeah.
experimenting will definitely help with like proving that, but like, I don't it's like, yeah, I you don't have to go through with it to know. But also, as you said, it could be a stepping stone to maybe learning that, oh, like, ruling something out,
Yeah.
though, just because like one sexual experience with one person may be very different to another person because of
Mhm.
how different people do things and
Yeah.
different chemistry and all that stuff.
Compatibility, yeah.
But, it can be a learning learning curve, and I'm just kind of rambling at this point. But
No worries.
one thing to kind of piggyback off of that, looking at all these different experiences and ways that people identify or can identify, maybe they're not there yet. As we said, it's a journey, but that reminds me of this other study that I conducted that I found. There's actually two studies that looked at how LGBTQ plus youth are identifying. And one study defined LGBTQ plus youth, quote unquote, as ages 13 to 24, which I liked because Lauren and I are 24. So that means that we are still young and with it,
Young at
apparently.
heart.
But anyway, so these youth are identifying less as gay, lesbian, and bisexual. Not saying that they aren't. Like, there's obviously a lot of people who still are, like, hello, me and Lauren, bisexual. But more people are identifying, compared to before, as these kind of newer or less understood terms like pansexual, asexual. And so that really is kind of, I guess, on the rise. That sounds like a weird way to say, like, these sexualities are on the rise, but I think it's kind of natural. As we learn more about these, more people are identifying as them. And as I said, these people who are older LGBTQ plus people, they're identifying more as queer and bi and pan and these more all-encompassing terms. And so specifically, this one study by the Trevor Project was looking at, this was the one where youth was defined as 13 to 24. They had over 34,000 respondents. And they asked people, they asked a bunch of things, but one of the things was, what do you identify as? And there was a write-in option, for other, if they didn't include something. And this was for both sexual orientation and gender identity. And for each one, they got over 100 like different write-in responses. So 100 different sexual orientations, 100 different gender identities. And a lot of them were, at least in terms of sexual orientation, a lot of them were differentiating between romantic and sexual attraction. So,
Yeah.
biromantic homosexual, or heteroromantic bisexual, or queer gray sexual, and so people were doing that more. Some of the gender identities were agender non-binary, or female gender flux, or like some gender apathetic, and so it's kind of this idea that we're starting to find more specific ways to label the nuances of our sexuality and gender identities.
Mhm.
And so I thought that was super interesting, because it's like, yes, lay lesbian, gay, and bisexual are all very valid, and a lot of people identify as that, but it isn't like that isn't the only narrative and the only story out there.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think the point about splitting up romantic and sexual attraction is such an important one because, like, again, growing up, I had no fucking idea that that was possible. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know that those could be separate, and I think that as people are realizing that, and as younger people are realizing that, they're able to more effectively describe what they are, and how they feel and who they're attracted to, but also feel like they find a label that doesn't feel constricting, or that doesn't feel
Mm,
like it's not totally correct.
yeah.
And I love that, because like I remember when I came out to bi to someone, they were like, "Oh, so you like boys and girls?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I could like anyone. Like I could like a man, I could like a woman, I could like a non-binary person. I literally just have to like them and that's the first step. Like I don't care."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh no, but you're bi. Like that means two. Like that means you only like men and women." And I was like, no, like, it is my identity, and I put a lot of fucking time into figuring this out, so, like, take it and run with it, you know? But I think that, for people having these labels that are a little more encompassing and feel more maybe accurate is so important, and, yeah, again, bisexuality and pansexuality are very similar, and the experiences can be a little different. Like, some people think that bisexuality there's, like, an issue where one of them is, like, transphobic because, it doesn't include all of them, but bi literally just means that you're attracted to 2 genders. It doesn't mean that you're attracted to men and women, it just means you're attracted to 2 plus genders, and, that definition I'm doing such a bad job of explaining this, but that definition was changed to reflect the fact that there are so many more convoluted and specific and just different genders coming to light and different gender identities. And so I think that the fact that even like the definition of it changed to reflect that of bisexuality. And yeah, I did a horrible job of explaining that.
No, you're good. Hello, it's me, Zareena. So, after playing it back and looking at what we said, Lauren and I just wanted to clarify a few things about what we just said. There's this common misconception that bisexual means you're attracted to men and women, and pansexual means you're attracted to men, women, and trans people. And the idea is that instead of bisexuality being transphobic or pansexuality being transphobic, that idea is transphobic because trans people are their gender. So lesbians are attracted to women, and that includes trans women. And gay men are attracted to men, and that includes trans men. Trans people and non binary people are included in these sexualities. And if someone doesn't date trans people, then that is specific to them, that individual, and not necessarily the sexuality as a whole. So, the main difference between bi and pan, bi is attraction to 2 or more genders, whereas pansexuality is attraction regardless of gender. So, from our understanding and what we've heard, and we talk about this a little more later, it's kind of like for pansexual people, there's still that sexual attraction, but gender just doesn't play a big role in that, which is kind of one of the deciding factors of why Lauren and I identify as bisexual rather than pansexual, because in our attraction to men and women, gender does play a role in that. And in pansexuality, it seems like it doesn't play as big of a role. And this is just our understanding based off of what we've heard, but once again, we don't identify as pansexual, so we can't fully speak on that, but that is based on our current understanding. So, yeah, just wanted to clarify that. And back to our conversation.
I think that the fact that there are so many ways now that people can describe themselves and even find a label that fits and meet other people using that label. Like maybe, you know, you just realized you're asexual, but you're also homo romantic. You can find other people who are like that now because you have a label. And so it finding a label and finding maybe other people or finding something that exists that validates how you feel can be so liberating and just feel so good knowing that like you're not alone in your experience or you're not making it up and it's real and it happens, like it's a thing. And I think that it's so cool that people are now having the tools to be able to describe themselves and effectively find something to that explains how they feel. But yeah, that I don't know if that made sense, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of like the good and bad of labeling and labels. Like on one side, it maybe can be a little too constricting for how you feel and can put you in a box that you don't quite feel comfortable being put into, that you don't fully identify with. But at the same time, it can be super liberating, which are, two opposite things, and be super liberating and connect you to like-minded people, or not like-minded, but, people who have similar
Yeah.
like identity and sexualities, and you can better, you can find a little bit of a community and a tribe and better understand yourself by talking to these people. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of, like many things, labeling can be complicated, and it's not messy, but a convoluted topic. Not
Yeah.
convoluted, but it's a multidimensional
Yeah, there we
thing.
go.
And also what you were saying about pie, about pie 3.14, have some, eat some pie. What you were saying about bi versus pan, something that I've heard, which, like, I guess correct me if I'm wrong. I've heard that bi is more, as you said, like attraction to multiple genders, whereas pan is more about the person's personality
Yeah.
being like taking the forefront. So a person's, how do I say that weird? A person's personality is the main driving factor of attraction, and that personality is still important, as I think with any attraction, like when you're looking for at least a partner, like a lifelong partner, not like a hookup.
Yeah.
Personality is important, but the personality aspect isn't like the 100% in the picture main driving force. Like, it's just another factor, and how much of a role it plays is dependent on the person.
Yeah.
And but that's kind of what I've kind of heard of as the distinction, and so I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of explaining it. And I think also with like bi, it's like the reason that because I was trying to decide if I was bi or pan. I thought I was pan back in college for a while.
Right.
I think I kind of realized that I feel slightly different types of attraction to people of different gender identities, and so I am attracted to their gender as well as them as a person. And then I feel like with pan, it's more of, as you said, the personality and who they are takes the forefront. But for me, it's like, oh, I can be attracted to like a man and find that masculine energy and their masculinity attractive, and then also their personality. And also like with someone who maybe is like non-binary, like that, I take that into account in attraction, and that kind of forms part of the attraction. And that's, I feel like that it is an interesting but very like small distinction, and might vary from person to person, but it is yeah, it is interesting, I feel like.
Yeah. I'm really glad I asked you that, because that was such a cool, like, explanation that you gave of how the attraction is different and how it does, play a factor, like with, as you said, like being attracted to a person and their personality and their looks, but also that maybe more masculine energy that they give off. It plays a role in that attraction. And that kind of reminds me of, what you're talking about, of the attraction to different genders feeling different. And we've kind of hinted at ratios changing. And so I thought this might be a nice place to talk about ratios and that switch, because I know
Uh,
for me, like, it's been more of like what I've called phases. And one reason why I hesitated on labeling myself as bisexual was for so long was because I didn't feel like it was always this 50-50, and I thought
yeah,
that's how it's supposed to be. And it's more like, oh, I go through phases where I feel that attraction to women more strongly, and then it ebbs or flows away because maybe I meet a guy who I'm really interested in, or something else happens. But it's been kind of this more like wave type of thing
yeah,
rather than a straight line. Straight. uh, but um
right.
and I actually was asking you like a week ago. I recently, I don't know, I guess I was kind of found myself being stuck on a guy from my past. And I was just kind of like, oh, like, okay, I closed the door on, or he closed the door on a romantic, situation, partner, whatever situation. And I need to flip my switch because right now I'm in this like this phase of being attracted to men and liking men, and I think it's because of this guy, because I
Yeah.
a lot of times if I like someone, I get pulled towards being
Yep.
attracted to their gender. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, Lauren, like, how do I consciously flip my switch? Because before it's just been something that happens to me. Like, I need to flip
Yeah.
my switch. And
I need to
so,
get gayer.
yeah. And so I think that's interesting. So let's chat about that.
Oh my God. Yeah. And know that not everyone experiences because I have gotten some mean comments on videos I've made about this, but a
Oh,
lot of people relate. And it's cool finding out that you're not the only one. I feel like when I
yeah.
realized it, I was like, thank God. Because like that's part of why, as you said, I was like, wait, but like sometimes I'm just straight. And that's like default that society gave me. So that's what I'm gonna go by because like sometimes I'm just into men and that's it. And like it's so like I remember in middle school one time I had a I had a giant crush on this girl. And my friends were like, "Oh, who do you have a crush on?" And so I gave them the name of this like random boy who was like in my class. And I would like tell stories about like the girl, but like make it sound like it was the boy because like I was like, "Oh, I'm straight."
Oh,
Like I'm so straight, guys. Bitch. Okay. but
oh, that's
but
like hilarious and heartbreaking at the same time.
I literally wrote her name on like the wall in my closet, like so creepy. But I had such a big crush, and like I was like, "Oh yeah, this boy is so hot." And they were like, "Oh, I saw you talking to that boy," and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right, we did." I love him. He's so hot, like just complete. Oh my god, it was closeted, like just literally and metaphorically. It was so much. But anyway, tangent. But that was my first experience with the bicycle, whatever the fuck.
Bicycle, yeah.
It never like it never made sense to me. And I always like really struggled with that because I thought it was just like, oh, you like men and you like women, and that is bisexuality. It was 50-50. And if you're not that, then you're not bi, and you're probably just straight and making it up or like whatever. And fucking, I don't even know.
Yeah.
And realizing that I was not the only one made things make so much more fucking sense because like for me like it yeah when I like someone I tend to swing towards that gender, but when I was like trying to like date a ton of people and like explore and being like when I was single outside of the pandemic, let's say, and I
Yeah.
was like going to bars and shit, I would find myself just kind of leaving my house and be like, all right, we'll see. We'll see who talks to me. Like, this is what's going to happen. And sometimes I would go out looking to meet like a woman or something, and I would be wearing more masculine clothing because that's how I dress when I'm trying to pick up girls. And I don't know why. It gives me a confidence. I don't fucking know. Hitting on girls is so scary. But I'd still sometimes like I'd be wearing like a collared shirt. I had my super short hair, and then a guy would come up and start talking to me, and I'd be like, "Why? Like, how are you getting straight vibes from me?" But then I'd be like, "Okay, no, like you're bi, like you are, but right now you're only into girls," and so it's just fucking confusing because like now this dude's talking to you, and I don't know what to do because maybe in 2 weeks I would have thought he was cute, but like right now, like stop. No, very confusing. And I remember there was this one time where I was feeling lonely, and so I go on Hinge, and I was like really into men at the time, that night, and I
That
had been,
night specifically.
yeah, I kind of had been more into men, but like that night I was like, I need a man, and so I fucking messaged like 30 people, like until it stopped letting me message people. I sent so many people messages be like, "Hey, hottie," like, "Hey, handsome," like, "What the fuck is up, bro?" Like, I didn't send any of those messages, but I sent a bunch of dudes messages, and then I woke up the next morning and looked in the mirror, and I was like, "I want to wear suspenders and a collared shirt, and I titties, like, you know, what the fuck?" Like, I just woke up and I was like, I'm into girls now. What the hell? And my phone, I wake up and it's just blowing up with the notifications from all these messages I sent. And like, I was just like, I don't know what the fuck to do because like these guys were, some of them were super cute, but I'm just not fucking into you right now. So confusing. And that happened vice versa with guys and girls and all of it. But yeah, it's so wild. Like just kind of like feeling your own brain make that switch and you're just like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm guess I'm into this now." And but still like and it's often it's just the way you're leaning. Like I've had times where I'm fully one way or the other and I'm kind of only thinking about that, but in the back of my mind I'm always like, "Yeah, no, it is. I'm bi." Like it's fluid. Like if the right fucking person comes along, they could flip flop this or like, you
Yeah.
know, even if it's like 99% right now, if I meet a 1%, then I'm into them because I'm into a person and I have the capacity to be attracted to any gender. And so if someone comes along that I'm attracted to, even though I'm swinging one way more right now, that doesn't matter because in the long run, it's you know,
Yeah.
unless you're like polyamorous, then it's like whom multiple, but like for me, it's just one person that I'm always looking for. And so you can always objectively find people hot, even if you're not super into that like gender at the time or whatever. It's kind of like, yeah, I can still recognize that. And you know, like when you're in like a relationship or something, it's like, oh no, that they're still hot. Like I can still see that, you know, like even though I'm committed to this person who is of this gender, I can still recognize that this person of another gender is hot. But also, for me, it is like the media has a big impact on it. Like if I'm
Mm.
watching a show and there's like a really hot character of like certain gender, then I will swing that way like right away. Like I remember I started watching the 100. Every single cast member is hot. Like they're all so beautiful. And I started watching it because I knew it had a lot of queer like representation and it's also just a good fucking show. But then there was this like dude, Bellamy, so
Bellamy.
beautiful, so beautiful. Literally look up that character. Ah, so hot. And I was like, oh shit. And then I had this was last summer, and I had this whole like crisis where I was like, fuck, like I post on TikTok talking about how I'm bi and how I'm attracted to girls and like, you know, people of other genders and whatever. But like this man in this show, I want him. I love him. Like oh my god. And I had this whole crisis of like, oh my god, I'm not really bi. Like what the fuck? Like I totally made it up and I'm actually just straight. And I was like, no, that is biphobia. That is internalized biphobia. You're allowed to find men attractive because they are to me because I can find anyone attractive. And so I kind of had this whole like internal dialogue and it kind of tied into that like switch kind of thing, like just being flipped. And you're like, oh fuck, I changed preferences. Like what do I do with this now? You know, and like when you are in like talking stages with people, I don't know, it's just like hard to wrap your mind around. Like when you're talking to like multiple people and like it's just different types of energy and like
Yeah.
but it's kind of the same as dating, like if you are focusing on just one gender because it's like different people. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 things.
Yes.
One, what you were saying about like, "Oh, like, I found this man attractive, so my, bisexuality isn't valid." I love what you said,
Yeah.
like, "No, internalized biphobia," and also, you identify as bi, not lesbian, and bi part of that is being attracted to men, or
Yeah.
at least for you, that's what that
Yeah.
means, and so that, is the other part of that. So, yes, attracted to women, but there's a reason why you identify as bi and not lesbian. And so That's one thing. And then the other thing is what you're talking about, how, we've talked about how it can switch. And for me, it's always been more like a month. Like I've never gone through a phase that's been shorter than a couple months. So hearing about waking up and having the switch just totally flipped is like, whoa. But there's this myth that bisexual people aren't loyal or to be trusted or aren't monogamous. And as you said, like when there's someone who you really like, and like I said this too, that pulls your sexuality in that direction. And like just because you're bisexual, that doesn't determine whether you're monogamous or polyamorous. I guess
Yeah.
would be the other word for that. Like those are two separate, exclusive things. And, there can be bisexuals who are, polyamorous, and there can be
Mhm.
bisexuals who are monogamous. And just because you are attracted to different genders and that switch can flip if you're with the right person and you're in a committed relationship. Like if you're in a committed relationship with a bi person and they say that they're monogamous, then that's, you have to trust that. And as with any straight relationship, like if someone, it's the same thing. Like if, you're in a straight relationship and you're worried about them cheating on your gender, versus like it's not like they're missing anything if they identify as a monogamous person, because if they are in a committed exclusive relationship with you, that means that they want to be doing that, and that means that like what you're giving is enough for them. And so yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, and I think that is interesting, and it opens up like a dialogue, because I think that it really is up to the person and that relationship, because a relationship that exists between two people, like those two people know the most about it. It's their thing. And like if you agree to be monogamous and fully monogamous, then like that shouldn't be an issue. But I do know that there are, literally just download Tinder and you will see so many of these. But it is totally valid. But there are a lot of like
Mhm.
bi, like couples that have a bi person in it, or maybe both of them are bi, but it'll be like a guy and a girl, and they'll have like threesomes. And because like maybe the girl is like bi, or she's exploring her sexuality and she wants to be able to do that, or like open relationships exist as well. And
Yeah.
I think that for some people, they do like to get that like energy out. It's like, oh, like I've been getting dick for so long, like I kind of also want some, like, whatever, like to mix it up. And that's totally valid. And I think that as long as like communication happens very clearly and like respectfully and whatever, between both partners, between anyone they're bringing into it, like not any like deception or whatever, I think that
Yeah.
that's totally valid too, because people maybe, even though they are like romantically like totally monogamous with their partner, they might still have those urges. Or some people are like ethically non-monogamous, and that's like absolutely valid. And so I think as long as people have conversations with their partners, like it should be like totally fine, and just make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah.
And like for me, like it's really rare for me to like someone in that way. And so when it does happen, it's like super special. And if I am with someone, I'm not gonna want anyone else, because like I only like one person at a time, and that's just like all I want. And so, in my experience, like I I hate the stereotype that bisexuals are more likely to cheat, because sometimes people will have that open dialogue with their partners. But like for me, I'm so fucking picky, and just because I can be attracted to anyone of any gender doesn't mean that I'm attracted to everyone. And I feel like there's this big misconception that like bi people are just like, oh, everybody is so hot, like, oh, I like you and I like you and it's like, no, it's not like that for everyone. Like I'm, even when I thought I was totally straight, I was extremely picky. And it just, I don't know, it's person to person. And so I
Yeah.
think that that's a totally valid part of anyone's like sexual, how they experience their sexuality, as long as they communicate it.
Yeah. definitely. Yeah, I thank you for bringing that up, that, like, yeah, some people do have threesomes or, have open relationships or other, you know, things in their relationship, and that's totally fine too, as long as there's communication and intentions, communicated. That doesn't make any sense, but as long as there's open communication and people are clear about their intentions on all sides, with your partner, with the person you're bringing in, that's totally fine too. But also, yeah, like the cheating thing, like it can exist, where, because I feel like a lot of people might think like, oh, like bisexual people can never be satisfied with one partner, and they can.
Oh yeah.
And so it's good to show both sides and just, yeah, have open communication with your partner, which is what a healthy relationship often is, regardless of people's sexualities
Yeah.
and identities. But yeah, I think that's actually a good place to end, because I think we've been talking for quite a while now.
Good 2 hours.
Yeah. So, see, I think we'll wrap up, but is there any, I guess, lasting statement that you want to make? I guess.
Um, you are valid as fuck, and your journey and any steps that you take in your journey are valid as fuck. And exploring is lit, and not exploring is lit, and just like thinking about what you want is all lit, and that's totally fine, valid, and it's okay if labels change, and it's okay if you have new realizations along the way, and that's why all these extra labels exist. And yeah, it's all just exciting, and it's a part of who you are, so it's lit. I don't know why I'm
Yay.
saying lit so much.
It's lit, it's fire, it's valid as fuck. Those are the mottos. Hashtag valid as fuck. Hashtag you are valid as fuck. But yeah, so Lauren is on the social medias, as you are probably aware of by now if you listen to this episode. So Lauren, where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Lauren Van underscore, and you can find me on TikTok at Callie her daddy. It's not a sex thing. It was my nickname for a long time. I can't explain it. I no shame to whatever, but I don't know. There's a story behind it, but yeah, that's where you can find me. Illy all you're valid as fuck.
Hey. And for speaking of, social media and stuff, this podcast is on Instagram at the Virgin and the Bees podcast. So you can check us out there. And if you're enjoying this podcast, why not share it with a friend, a sibling, your partner, a partner, if polyamorous, a colleague, if that's not weird, random person in line at the grocery store. Actually, don't
Oh
do that. Don't creep anyone out. But
yeah.
but if you're comfortable with someone and you think that they'd enjoy this podcast, then I greatly appreciate if you share it with them and spread the word. So, yeah. All right. Well, keep on buzzing, and you're all valid as fuck. That's one thing. And then the other thing, which I can't really remember, but it was important. um, uh, but gosh darn, I can't remember.
Oh, Rudy Tooty.
Go, Rudy Tooty. As you said, messaging a lot of guys. The switchy switch goes. Oh yes, yes. That had to do with monogamy.
Oh yeah, okay. All right.
And
Monogamy.
so,
Okay. What was I gonna say?
no
The
worries.
train
Take your time. No worries.
the fucking station. Holy shit, I had such a good point. Um Oh yeah, okay.
Oh, you cannot minimize Zoom when you were recording this meeting. Okay, sorry. Okay. So,
Trying to cancel it.
um,